I was made redundant in April after working in corporate for 20 years to a relatively senior level in the end. And since then, I've gone on to become a full-time professional content creator, which even in its own right sounds mental saying. So in this video, I'm going to go through everything in terms of how I've managed to create a business out of a side hustle and what it's all meant for me, everything that I've learned as a result of doing that, the hard stuff, the good stuff, and everything else in between, and whether you can potentially even do it yourself. So first of all, going through redundancy is hard. So you might not necessarily be going through redundancy yourself. You might just decide you hate your job, you want to get out of it, you want to be a content creator, or you want to set up your own business and you want to have a little bit of freedom in your life in order to be able to do it. But being redundant is hard emotionally, even though it is the best thing that's ever happened to me. At the time of going through it, it's incredibly difficult experience. They're often when you work in multi-billion pound private companies, it's obviously often a very quick process. My meeting lasted 7 minutes. I was at a site. I was due to have a meeting at 2:00, and at 5 to 2, I had a request to join an urgent meeting, and apologies for the short notice. I walked into the room. There was my line manager, my line manager's line manager, and HR, and I was like, right, okay, here we go. 7 minutes later, I was in my car driving home, and that was in April, and I've not looked back since. So that evening I didn't sleep that night. I always sleep. I have never have a problem with sleeping. But that evening was a hell of a lot of emotions going on. I was over the moon, so happy, the best thing that ever happened to me. But also, going through redundancy makes you question who you are, the value you bring to the world. I say this all the time, but even the word is a terrible word. Redundant. It means useless, has no need whatsoever, doesn't it? Especially when you work in such a niche area such as I did. I was in packaging innovation and sustainability for food companies, multi-billion pound food and drink companies across the UK and the world, actually. Now, however, as I say, the reason that there was so much joy associated with it is because 3 years prior to that, I started what you are watching right now, a YouTube side hustle. And that's because during COVID, I learned how to invest. I read every single book going. I threw myself into it and I became obsessed with it. And then I thought, right, listen, I'm going to document my journey. My journey has always been, and this was when I was 37, to retire by the time I was 50. And by retirement, that means for me financial independence. So having enough assets that pay all of my bills. So I worked out a plan in terms of how I was going to do that. That was in January 2020, started implementing that. By 2022, I started a YouTube channel. It took me a year to monetize that. I was doing 3 videos a week. Now, I was god awful. I'm not saying I'm any good now, but I was terrible. Now, I was going from a position where I was an expert in my field, highly regarded across the entire of the UK sector that I worked in, to being an absolute noob and not knowing a single thing about any of this content creation business. But I threw myself into it and slowly got a little bit better. Then I moved on to short form, which really accelerated all of this. So on TikTok, I've blown up to 120,000 subscribers, something like that. And that has really been what's enabled me to do all of this. Now, the importance of having that side hustle established and building and growing in the background is what has meant that this has been such a joy to go through. I have always wanted to be doing something like I'm doing. Not necessarily content creation, but doing something I love. And I did love doing what I was doing, but doing something at home with my family, complete freedom, no line manager, responsible for my own deadlines, outcomes, etc. That's what I've always wanted to do, and I'm doing that now as a result of this working out. So the first thing I would say is, if you do want to do something like this, like I say, it doesn't have to be content creation, it can be anything, but what is that side hustle that you want to build up? An extraordinary amount of people are starting to build up side hustles now because cost of living crisis, because inflation, because wages aren't keeping up, because life is bloody hard. Right, it is financially very hard. The median salary in the UK is £36,000, which is barely enough to scrape by when food is going up by 5% inflation every year. So what can that other thing be? Have a think about it. What do you absolutely love doing? What are you obsessed with? What is something that you know you're going to be thinking about and doing when you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning? What is that thing, and how can you monetize it? The second thing that enabled it to be a more comfortable experience was the fact that I started investing. So by the time I was made retired, I had over 6 figures in my portfolio. That meant that if this failed, I had a buffer. I had a number of years worth of buffer. Now, I don't want to touch my stocks and shares ISA. That's for me to make myself financially independent. But if it all fails, I had that buffer in the background to help me survive for a number of years. And if I needed to go back and work into industry again, I could do that. But it gave me the opportunity for at least a year. That's what I set myself out when I was made redundant. Let's give it a go for a year and see if we can make it happen. Now, without that buffer, that would have been so much more high risk. I was also fortunate with my redundancy package, which was enough money to see me through for a good few months as well. So there is luck incorporated into this. So in fact, if you're anyway religious, I'm not personally, but you know, it was absolute fate, right? I love being outside and in the garden. It happened at the beginning of spring, which meant I got to spend the whole summer in my garden. I got a really decent package. It was just as my channel was getting real traction, specifically on TikTok, and I was making decent money by then already, and I never would have jumped myself. So I got that push that I needed in order to try and make this work. Now from there, I've had to set up a limited company. I've had to do loads of stuff that's really difficult. Set up a limited company, get an accountant, deal with all of that sort of stuff. The admin, I am god awful with. I'm terrible at it. I'm now VAT registered as well, so I have to do all of that. And actually, most of the people, the brands that I work with, they don't pay VAT. So I have to, that's a hit that I have to take. All of the admin and accountancy, it's a pain in the arse. So some people will be really good at that, and fair play to you. But the stuff that you aren't good at, outsource it, right? Pay for it. It's a business cost at the end of the day, which means you won't pay the tax on it. So I have an accountant that does pretty much everything for me, all my VAT, all my returns, all of the director's notes, whatever it is, all of that sort of stuff. But I'm still learning all of the side of actually running a business, which is difficult. It's a learning curve. So I love learning stuff, but that stuff's boring as hell. So I'm still going through that process, and I put all that sort of stuff off all the time. And that's the second point. You know, motivation is more difficult when you are self-employed, especially when you do this sort of stuff, because I don't have a boss, I don't have deadlines. It is my responsibility to get content out daily, which I do on TikTok, and weekly, which I haven't been as consistent as on YouTube. And I have to get up in the morning every single morning and work. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes I'll sit at my desk here for an hour and just scroll and do nothing because there's no one shouting at me. So self-motivation is massively important if you want to go down this path. Another thing that you don't have is a consistent income. So I've gone from having a monthly paycheck every single month, irregardless or regardless. Both mean the same thing, don't they? I'll leave it in. Regardless of how I was performing, how the business was performing, I was getting a paycheck every single month. That's not guaranteed in this world. And ad revenue from YouTube and ad revenue from TikTok, you have to be doing millions of views for that to be viable. So I've had to branch out. And if you'll have noticed, there is now the odd sponsored piece of content. I've got one going live next week. And I've had to do that in order to make it viable. Now, I've had to balance it very carefully, and I've only ever worked with brands of products that I use and rate. Credibility is the most important thing with content creation. You will lose an audience in a second. If I was to start pushing meme coins, if I was to start selling dodgy crap from wherever, China on TikTok shop or whatever it was, you lose credibility immediately. Now, I have had opportunities to do videos sponsored by massive companies that will pay me a fortune, 10 times what I'm being paid by current people, but it's not worth it in the long term. I want to make this a long-term go of it. So credibility is massively important, not selling out, having a long-term plan, making sure that you're doing it for all of the right reasons. At the end of the day, finance is one of the most, in terms of this sort of thing, you know, if you're listening to someone talking about finance and their investments and all that sort of stuff, and they're clearly pushing dodgy crap, you are not going to listen to them much longer. So a shout out to my sponsors and my affiliates, because that's what's made this work. And without them, it wouldn't. I just wouldn't be able to do it. And if you do see it and you do find it annoying, I do apologize. Well, I got to pay the bills, right? I got to pay the bills. So I don't do it on every video. Absolutely not. In fact, on TikTok, I do about 80 to 90 videos a month, and about 3 or 4 of them will be sponsored. So it's a very small proportion of ads that you'll see on my channel. Now, everyone's circumstances are different as well. So I do still have a mortgage. I have covered that recently. It was pretty controversial on TikTok. Check that out. I've got £200,000 owed on my mortgage and 19 years left on it. So I need to make this work. What I've done is, I've got 3 things going for me. Okay, so I've got my redundancy payment. I've got my portfolio, which is a fallback, but also all of the money I made in this business, which has been a business now for a couple of years, I have never taken it out. So all of the profit in this business has gone into an Invest Engine business investing account. And I've got quite a bit of cash in there now, and it just sits there. I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I haven't had to take any out because of the circumstances that I find myself in. Not everyone will be in that. In some circumstances, mine is a relatively lower risk because of the amount of capital I was fortunate to have. It is higher risk because I am the 90% breadwinner in this house. I've got a very big mortgage and very hungry kids. So review your circumstances if this is something that you want to do, because it will be different for everyone. But let me tell you, it has been the best 6 months of my life. I have never been as happy as I am right now. I went to the doctor after I got made redundant and I had dangerously high blood pressure. He said that, I don't know if this is professional of him or not, you're a heart attack waiting to happen. So I'm 42 years old, and it's hereditary. My dad had the same issue. My dad died relatively young, a number of years ago, but that was compounded by the stress of working in corporate life, right? It is a stressful experience, especially when you're a senior. There's a lot of responsibility. There was a lot of travel. There was a lot of plates to spin. It was stressful. There's no getting away from it. It was stressful. Extremely early mornings, late nights, sometimes flying in and out of countries in the same day for meetings, all of this sort of stuff. It takes a toll on your health, and I have never been healthier than I am now. I've lost a stone. My blood pressure is in control. I wake up, I was saying to my wife the other day, I've been struggling to sleep, and I was wondering, why is that? And it's actually because I'm so excited about the next day, as cringy as that sounds. And that's how I live. Every day I'm excited about the next day. I'm here with my kids when they go to school. I'm here when they get home. I'm making fresh meals for them, scratch cooking for them every single day. No day is like a weekday. I don't have a Monday, right? I don't have that Monday feeling. I don't have that Sunday feeling. Now, there is work associated with it, and I've had to work very hard. And you have to get the balance right as well in terms of that. So yes, you've got to self-motivate, but don't end up overworking. Now, the difficulty with social media is you're checking stuff all hours of the day. As soon as I wake up, the first thing I'm doing is checking my analytics, checking my comments. I can't sit in the evening and watch a football game without checking every 15 minutes what people are saying, what's going on. And that's something I do have to work on. So in terms of financials, how's it worked out? I'm not going to give you the actual numbers, but what I will tell you is I was a senior leader in a multi-billion pound business, one of the biggest food businesses in the world. And now as a content creator, I'm making more money from this than I was doing that. Now that's because of the sponsorships, because of the affiliates, yes, the ad revenue, but all of this has put me into a position where I've got a pretty stable and steady income on a monthly basis. It doesn't fall below a certain threshold, which I'm comfortable with, and it's all building up in a pot. So I'm very, very lucky and fortunate in that respect. Now, the thing is with me and my content, you'll notice it on this. That's why my YouTube has not probably been quite as successful, because I'm not a brilliant videographer. My lighting is not the best. My background is not the best. My edits are not the best, right? There's not stuff flashing all over the screen, awesome music, B-roll, but I've come to accept that. What I do have is my experiences and my knowledge to share, which I do as often as I possibly can, and share as much value as I possibly can. And that's my strongest selling point, I suppose. I'll never get to a point, and I've accepted this now. I'm not Damien. My videos are never going to look like they came out of Hollywood. They're always going to look pretty raw. But what they'll always be is they'll always be honest. They'll always be telling you of all my experience that I've gone through and everything that I can possibly share. So that authenticity and honesty is the one thing that I have. And the second thing that I have in order to be able to make this work has been consistency. I am bloody stubborn, right? Like I say, I've been doing it for 4 years. 2 years, I didn't make anything. I lost money. 2 years. I kept going. I kept putting content out. At one point, I was putting 3 YouTube videos out a week. They were probably pretty crap. And I put 3 TikToks out a day. But I kept that up for 95, not 99% of the time. There were times when I was like, I can't be arsed with this and I'll take a week off. 95% of the time, I kept going. I didn't stop. If you throw enough shit, some of it's going to stick. Okay, so the most important thing with content creation is consistency. You will see a decline in views, right? That will happen. Even on my TikTok last week, I was talking to my other creator friends. I was struggling to get above 2,000 or 3,000 views on a video. What did I do? I actually doubled down. I would put more content out. I was throwing more. And this week, I've done just short of 2 million views. So you have to be able to deal with those ups and downs, which are extreme with content creation. Now, it'll be the same whatever industry that you decide to go into if you do want to do self-employed. It's not a linear line. It is just like investing, and I've learned that from investing. It doesn't go up like that, it goes up like that. But as long as the gradient is going in the right direction in the long term, you'll do okay. And so, can anyone actually do this? No, I don't think they can. I don't think they necessarily can. Some people's risk tolerances will be too low. They won't be in a position where they can deal with the risk associated with it, with the psychological side of things not working out, with the risk of losing a monthly pay check. I get all of that. And if that's the case, there is nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. A lot of people have done very well with and in a 9 to 5. And if that's what you want to do, you should absolutely focus on that. Smash it, keep learning, keep networking, keep growing, keep doing everything you possibly can in order to be able to increase that. However, if you do want to take a risk, and I keep using content creation as an example, it is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, right? The opportunity is still there. It is not too late to start an Insta, a TikTok, a YouTube. And you'll be crap at the start, by the way, unless you fly out the blocks and you're just naturally gifted to this sort of stuff. I absolutely am not. But I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago with a guy from YouTube talking about the analytics. It is the biggest streaming service in the world. It is an industry that's growing by 25% per year. And this is a multi-billion-pound industry, and it's growing by 25% per year. There aren't many industries like that. The future continues to look like that people are going to consume content on YouTube, on TikTok, and Insta, and move away from linear, old school platforms. That's a fact of the matter. If you have experience in something, in anything that you can share, if you can start to verbalize that, present it, deliver it, however it is you possibly can, start, because oh my God, it has absolutely changed my life. And with that in mind, I said that when I got over 100 TikTok subscribers, I would give a silver coin away. And I will do the exact same now on YouTube, having gone above 10,000 subscribers. Let me grab it. It's just here. All right, hang on. So I'm going to give away another silver 1 ounce Britannia. These have absolutely flown recently. They're beautiful, aren't they? That's what I really like about them. So I'm going to give that away on this video. And if you've got to this point, that means that you are someone that, I don't know, watches my content to the end, which means the world to me. So all you need to do to win this is 2 things. 1, sign up to my newsletter, which will be linked in the description, and write coin in the comments. That's all you need to do. Now, I don't get very many views on YouTube, a few thousand typically, so the redemption rate is going to be really, really low. So just put coin below, sign up to the newsletter. You're probably going to be in about a 1 in 5 chance of winning that. I'll also comment. I'll reply to every single comment on this video. Any questions that you have about how I've done this, how I've managed to make it work, let me know and I'll go over it. And let's finish as we always do. Let me find today's joke of the day. I didn't script anything. I did a few bullet points today, so apologies if I rambled on a bit, but I just wanted to share my experience. No, that was, where are we? What's the date today? Right, here we go. September 26th, that's when I'm recording this. Is going live on Saturday, by the way. Which Avenger is the most trustworthy? The Credible Hulk. Right. I do hope my kids don't buy me this calendar next for Christmas this year. Right, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, newsletter sign up below and type coin.